Hello, folks, and welcome to yet another episode in the series, Homo Politicus. I'm Cyril Abaku, standing in for your regular host, Citizen Jones Hussein. Oh, well, this is the program where we like to interrogate contemporary issues thrown up by your country, my country, contemporary Nigeria. Today's topic is Qatar reverses self, agrees to hold bilateral business talks with Nigeria. I hope you got that right. Qatar reverses self, agrees to hold bilateral business talks with Nigeria. Now, the storm in the teacup appears to have doused, but not without leaving in its wake bitter trails of suspicion and misgivings, if you like. Let's start with the story, shall we? The government of Qatar has reversed itself after it had initially said it would not host a business meeting with Nigerian businesses on the sidelines of President Bola Tinubu's visit to the country early next month. That's in March. Now, the refusal to host the meeting was contained in a tone and language that came across as demeaning by many Nigerians. As a matter of fact, that communication leaked into a public space. But in a note verbal dated 23 February and communicated to the Protocol Department of Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Ministry, Qatar's Chamber of Commerce said it will host the Business and Investment Forum on the margins of the president's visit. The embassy had earlier said it could not host the side event, leading to criticisms from some Nigerians. President Tinubu is scheduled to travel to Qatar for a state visit on the 2nd and 3rd of March, which is just like this weekend running into next week. My guest on the show today is Kenneth Ikenwa. Kenneth Ikenwa has been here before. He is a business consultant and political strategist. You're welcome, Ken.
Thanks, Cyril. Thanks for having me on. Good afternoon, viewers at home.
Of course. This story is not new. It trended over the weekend. And a lot of us have been aghast as to how our country appears to have taken its foot off the clutches of thoroughly executing statecraft. What do you think?
Well, it's pathetic that after about 63 years, 40 of which we have spent in exhibiting global leadership, championing the cause of Pan-Africanism, contributing to the economic well-being of nations, contributing to the human and intellectual capital of even developed countries,
Of course.
being the food basket of the regional economic bloc, and much more. To think that your country, my country, our country can be treated like this. It says a lot about the stoke that is being poked in the wheel of our progress, and it begs a lot of questions, which in Latin we will call principi petitio.
Let's, get a little deeper into the conversation. This is a basic question of country to country, letter,
Bilateral relations.
bilateral talks. You exchange letters. You usually, before you even send a letter, there would have been, informal backdoor channels to say, okay, we want to do this. How is it that the president is about to travel to Qatar? This is typical. A president is traveling; he will take the business community along with him. They'll have agreements. They'll enter into deals. Is there a possibility that the Qataris are borrowing a leaf from what happened in the earlier meeting at the UAE, when the president had visited and his spokesman came and said something, which the Qataris later said, look, the UAE later came and said this didn't happen. Why would they reject a business meeting for that matter?
All right, so let's cut a slack for the president, the current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And I'll take you back into the wheel of history, because this is not the first time that the Qataris are treating Nigeria like this and this way. That's why I said it's not so much so about the individual, but it is much more about the perception that is out there about the country Nigeria, as though there's nothing good that over the years has come out of Nigeria. Now, let me also take you deeper further back into history. When I ruminated over this issue and over this topic, I had a little bit of tear in my eyes. And you may want to ask me why. Now, it will surprise you. I'm taking you back into history. that between 1962 and 1965, rich Arab princes, I wouldn't mention specific countries, used to travel on the reverse. Now it is us wanting to travel to these countries, go to Dubai, go to Qatar, and want to spend our petrodollars and refuse to invest in our country. But back in the early 60s, it was medical tourism for these princes, for these, administrators to come down to Nigeria, all the way to Ibadan, the University College Ibadan and the University Hospital Ibadan for treatment. University College Hospital, University of Ibadan, for treatment, for checkup, but the reverse is the case. So we will take the conversation deeper by asking ourselves too, that how did we get to where we are, that we have now are being treated as a mockery, kicked back, amidst the Committee of Nations. It's a big puzzle for me. I'm still reflecting on it. I hope that I will be comforted. It's painful to think that those who were coming to your country 60 years ago to come for treatment, come for checkup, to avail themselves of the facilities that were here. The reverse is now the case. It's as though those facilities are no longer here in Nigeria. And even when they are here, it seems to be meant for an exclusive reserve of people in a particular strata of society. So I'm happy with what is happening. I'm also happy that we're having this topic so that the younger generation can be reminded that there was a country, like Citizen Jones would like to say, there was a country, there was a time in your country where rich princes from the Middle East used to come to your country for their medical checkup, for their operations, because we had that much good facilities, and most of those facilities were not even manned by expatriates, they were manned by local Nigerian doctors.
That's exactly where I wanted to go next. The human resource.
So I was reading your mind, you say. Telepathy, we'll call it.
The human resource component of this whole thing. Because countries don't run themselves. Human beings run countries. Systems, institutions, governments, organizations, corporate or otherwise, don't run themselves. People man and run these places. Now, for example, I'm glad you also pointed the fact that it was indigenous doctors. It was an era in which we had somebody like Dr. Thomas Adere Lambo, the world famous psychiatrist, who went on to become the vice president of the WHO. He was at you at the time.
True.
Now, the question is, the embarrassment we're facing today, is it a lack of putting round pegs in round holes? Or it's just a matter of the fact that even if you brought angels to run Nigeria, things have gone so bad that we can't just get them right?
Let's leave angels. They belong to another colony.
Okay.
Let's come back to we as Nigerians.
Okay.
And look deep into our DNA, our political DNA, our cultural DNA, to look for solutions to the problems. And not just problems, what we call wicked problems that we are actually dealing with as a people and as a country.
I know you are a business organizational psychologist or consultant. When is a wicked problem?
I'm also a lecturer, not just a consultant.
Is that contained in the books anyway, wicked problems?
Oh, yes, you could check that up in Google. There's something we call wicked problems. There's an entire theory that is dedicated into espousing what wicked problems actually are.
In social science?
In the social sciences, yes. In the management sciences. I'm not building up. Wicked problems. Yes. The problems in Nigeria are wicked problems. They're not just problems you can pray over and wish away or whisk away, or just think you set up a committee and think overnight it's going to be solved as a problem. These are really wicked problems.
Yes,
they are problems that are like the Hydra, the mythical Greek beast called the Hydra, with a lot of heads.
Yes.
So as you are dealing with this head and dealing with this head, more heads are there for you to deal with, and more heads are even springing up. But that said, it doesn't mean that there is no hope for the country. It just means that there is much more to be done. And to an extent, that makes me a little bit sympathetic with whosoever is president. It doesn't matter. It's not a function of nomenclature. It's not a function of tribe. It's not a function of who is on the seat right now. It could have been you. It could have been me. Nigeria is a complex country. All right? You must have a complex strategy you must be fearless. You must have the courage. You must also have the intellectual sagacity and capacity to be able to navigate Nigeria away from the murky waters that we found ourselves. Now, let's come back to your question. If we had this capacity and these capabilities in the 60s, what has happened? We must go back to history, all right, to try to identify the corpuses of issues that have led us to where we are today. We were doing well, fantastically growing. We were growing above some Western countries today in terms of GDP, in terms of population, in terms of some certain key indicators. We were heads and shoulders above China in the 60s. Yeah. We were heads and shoulders above Singapore in the
South
60s.
Korea, all of them.
We were heads and shoulders above South Korea. Malaysia came here. The Singaporean president that made Singapore what it is today, he visited, he lodged in the Federal Palace Hotel in 1966, just before the war, just before the coup d'etat. That brings us back to the history. So if we did well between 1960, in fact 1958, when we started, 1956, when we started pushing for democracy, up until 1966, where there was a putsch and where there was a disturbance, a strategic disturbance in the governance system. Is there a possibility that that intrusion, that distortion in our political trajectory probably set us back 60 years behind? Because one of the things that what happened in 1966 did, irrespective of whatever the arguments are, where I don't think the politicians in the 60s as, wanton, for better word of expression, as the current politicians and the current administrators that we have now.
I can't agree more.
So whatever happened in the 60s had a permanent impact on our political and cultural DNA as a country, for which we are still paying for. And that is why we live in a country where it is not your intellectual know-how that to a great extent determines how far you can go. But it begins with what is your name. It begins with the color of your name. It begins with the color of your tribe. And then it ends with the yardstick of probably who you know. That way is not the way to grow a country. So when we look at these indicators, and when we have a leadership that understands the pathetic dynamics and the mechanics, behind these indicators, we can begin to organize ourselves effectively to move as a nation. And what does it mean to move as a nation? It means we need to come together. The almost 350 different ethnic groups, that make up Nigeria, we need to come together and galvanize ourselves and borrow a cue from the Super Eagles. When the Super Eagles were playing, despite the disappointment we all had a few weeks back, they played as a team. Nobody looked at a member of his tribe or a member of his religion before he or she could pass the ball. Nobody cared who scored the goal. Nobody cared at a point now who was mounting the goal. What we just had was somebody that was fantastic enough, to save us the tears. People died, despite how fantastic this team was playing. If we can go back to that and get a leadership, get a crop of technocrats, a crop of administrators that will begin to fashion out Nigeria as a team and begin to build everybody into that team and lead as team leaders and let the followers do their part. I think that would be a good beginning into solving the wicked problem that has led us where we are today.
So what I've gotten from everything you've said so far in response to this particular question is that one could even begin to consider to think about or elucidate on what one may propose to call the super growth paradigm of leadership for Nigeria.
Fantastic. You should be awarded a professor of practice for that paradigm that you are espousing now and bringing to life. Thank you for that.
And of course, you are the one who was explaining.
And so you give me the credit when you are getting your new feathers.
Of course. But I also want to take it one step further, because the issue here is, of course, the Nigeria to Qatari diplomacy, whatever it is. But the underlying issue is security here, because the memo was leaked. Kenneth, the memo was leaked. How is government not able to prevent memos from leaking this way?
All right. One of the things I also do as pastime is build capacity in technology development or technology management, technology and innovation management, as it were. And it will interest you to know that technological advancements and progress is saturating the nook and crannies of everywhere in the world. And the presidency,
except Nigeria, perhaps.
well,
by choice.
Well, it depends.
By choice.
I think it's by growth. We're growing. I mean, we're growing. We're doing well. In terms of internet penetration, we're doing well.
Yes, we are.
In terms of saturation of smartphones and some kinds of technology, we're doing well.
What in communication, sorry, we call adoption of innovation, right? We're talking about technology, imbibing technology as
technological adoption.
As culture.
Okay, I think that if I should speak to that, we also have some forms of indigenous technology. So you may be guilty of saying we are not quick to adopting technology.
Okay.
You have to categorize or put into dichotomy what kind of technology.
I was hoping to hear you mean what you meant.
So we have indigenous technology. Yes. We have what you will call maybe the technology they're actually referring to that you say we're not adopting. Before the white man came, we've been frying our gari, we've been doing our things, and we didn't need the machines of the white man to be able to get those things done. We're feeding ourselves. Before the white man came to Africa, we were building houses, we were building story buildings.
Street lamps in Benin and all those places.
Yes, we had street lights in Benin. Yes. So tell them, let them hear. Yes. I'm happy you're a good student of history. So
by the time, it wasn't in China, it wasn't in any other part of the world.
It was just indigenous.
We've had knock terracotta.
These things are there. Yeah. So we need to educate the public.
Yes.
It's not everything bad.
But in 2024, government members are leaking up and down.
I was coming to that.
Okay.
You would not expect that in every team of 12, there won't be a Judas. There will always be a Judas. And there would always be people that actually benefit, from this kind of things. And for memos, for strategic memos, for classified documents to actually leak, it's not a big thing. It's not a big thing. These things happen in the most advanced, technologically advanced country on earth, America.
As breaches, not as, yes.
Whether, irrespective of whatever nomenclature or synonym you choose to give it, a leakage is a leakage, okay? So documents get leaked. This one got leaked. But, like I said, the last time we engaged, I love to be dialectical in my analysis and in my views. Are there advantages that also come from the leakages of documents? We look at it from that point of view. So whether you have classified documents or not, within the context of democracy, within the context of what is probably not proper, but good
this leakage
for society
was an advantage.
Of course it's an advantage. you can't...
For democracy. And good governance.
For the present situation we find ourselves, which has led to the reversal of a policy, it is an advantage.
Because for everyone leak, there could be
an advantage locking somewhere in the corner.
10 more that would even
so that's it. It's an advantage.
Please go.
But if the real issue, on a more serious note, the real issue is the extent to which this advantage, which we have exposed and espoused now, can be taken advantage of, and most importantly, how the president and his team can actually hit a home run with this opportunity. It's a vista of opportunity that's opened, but how well can we hit a home run with it?
Unfortunately, a lot of the leaks we've witnessed with government have been leaks that have been in favor of the people, which means that...
So you're agreeing with me now? You're agreeing with my theory now?
I'm dispassionate. I mean, if you look at it, it means those in government actually understand the imperative of keeping government secret. But there are some things that they just can't stomach. They are nameless, they are faceless, we don't see them, we don't even hear from them, but we hear when they want us to hear from them. The president there was a memo saying we need 1 billion for the committee on minimum wage to sit down and have discussions on agreeing on what the minimum wage should be.
Yeah.
Then there was
amazing.
There was the green barrel that said the SGF begin with 500 million, and I was wondering 500 million to begin holding these conversations for government committee on minimum wage. It leaked. Government may not have Miami, but it was good for us as citizens to know what was really going on. Now again, the fact that government cannot execute basic manners of statecraft. I mean, if we got to know these things, but don't you feel that one day we may get to hear or see or know what should not have been made public?
It doesn't matter. And that's why we have an area in marketing, an area in the social sciences, which we call public relations. And this is what I said just yesterday in a sister station of yours, that look, when you're asking the NLC, you get a court injunction to ask the NLC not to go to strike. But in your time as an activist, you were allowed to strike, to protest freely. It doesn't all go well. But most importantly, when I was asked for a solution, I said, look, let's not waste too much time with speaking too much English about this. The fact is that there needs to be a trialogue. And what's the third angle to that dialogue, which makes it a try, is engagement. So even when these things get leaked in advanced countries, you see the president's men and women. And I insist on the caveat, women, because we are seeing women in the Nigerian government, but we are not hearing women in this present administration. I believe, as a digression, that one of the things that can make Nigeria work is if we give women, women of virtue, women that are not prone to corruption, women that do not fall under any of the characteristics of what we have witnessed in our country in the last 3 months. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. We need to have more women in places of power, in places where critical decisions that affect the Nigerian people are taken. We need to have more women there. But back to the subject matter. How does the government handle leaks, and why are these things happening? These things will happen and will continue to happen, all right? Because don't forget, everybody has the availability, or everybody's availed of mobile phones. These are things you could easily snap. These are things that you could even capture with some gadgets on your body, and nobody will actually know that this gadget is actually recording. So that is not the problem. But in 1995, I watched a Nigerian movie. I don't want to call the name of the actor now so that it doesn't, spike up some unnecessary emotions. But one of the things I learned in that movie 28 years ago was just one line. A clear conscience needs not fear any accusation. That line never left my head up till now. If you have nothing to hide, if you have nothing to be scared of, you shouldn't be scared if any document will be leaked. That's my message to the government on that matter.
Good. As we take this discussion home, let's also be mindful of how this now places Nigeria in the community of nations. Perception building, for example. Brazil wants to have a business, whatever, with Nigeria, Italy, anybody. They may be a bit worried of having some real serious discussions, using regular diplomatic channels, or they may just, they could have a lot more to fear than they should, really. Because, a lot of things that happen in diplomacy shouldn't be known until the final draft or whatever is ready. How do you think other countries will begin to perceive Nigeria?
Honestly, I'm not disturbed about how other countries perceive Nigeria. It only becomes disturbing when you go to apply for a visa and the quantum of embarrassment you get when you're applying for a visa. You need to see the way our citizens are treated in some high commissions and in some embassies in Lagos here. Even by Nigerians that work in those embassies. So I wouldn't want to go into mentioning of the names of such countries, but that is, if there's anything at all that will perturb me, that should be the issue. I believe that when things like this happen, it's important that the sitting president should sit down and have a reflection, because these issues bring us to a point of inflection.
It does.
It means that we have gotten to a point where what we have been doing seems not to be working.
But for good or for bad, the inflection, post-inflection, is it for good or for bad?
Perception is the catalyst of reality.
It is.
The way you will perceive this matter. I've told you now. You were saying, this is bad. And I said, this is the advantages that have come out of this. What I see, if I was on the president's team, if I could talk to him, if I could, engage him, if I could write an open letter to him, is not to be worried about these perceptions. Now, for me, no one nation should be the model. But I love to refer to countries like China, countries like Singapore. This is the time for Nigeria to sit back and stop relying on shuttle democracy. This is not the time to start begging the IMF to borrow us money. This is not the time to start running from pillar to post in order to rescue the economy. China was worse off than this.
They were.
40,
They were.
45, 50 years ago.
They were.
With almost about 300 to 400 million people living in poverty.
Abject poverty.
Abject is an understatement. Multi-dimensional poverty.
Yes.
But China today is about the second or third largest economy in the world and has been able to pull about 900, if not the entire 1 billion of her citizens out of poverty.
Which means it's possible.
I'm getting there. It is possible. But China did not go begging the IMF for loans. China did not go doing shuttle democracy here and there. China shut up her nation. Sat down. Excuse me. Sent a few of her citizens out to study and bonded them to make sure they come back with the knowledge. Opened up strategically the borders of the country.
They did.
And they saw the Western world fell into that throughput. I'm not going to use the word you're expecting me to use. I know what you're expecting me to say. I'm not going to say it. But opened up their country into that throughput. And this country started coming and said, oh, there's cheap labor here. Let's invest in this country. They started setting up manufacturing firms in China. And China allowed those things. And China was learning, increasing.
It was a bait that worked.
You said so.
It was a bait that worked.
But the bait led to the increase in the learning curve experience of China that has made China a technological leader in the world today and the hub for manufacturing all over the world. And now the Western nations are thinking of how to bring back their jobs and bring back their original economy and bring back their capabilities to their countries. It can't work. China has gone ahead. What do I mean? There are two ways to solve the problem of a country, especially the kind of problem that we have found ourselves now economically. One, you either go organic, or two, you go external. You go borrowing, you go begging, you go kneeling, you go traveling unnecessarily. And with unnecessary knocking on the door of your neighbor, the Bible says, actually makes you an irritant to your neighbor. What we have experienced now is that Nigeria is being regarded as an irritant country that can be spoken to at will, whose citizens can be deported at will, whose citizens can be treated
Because
as dung at embassies, at high commissions,
yes.
whose citizens and whose name is always used to label every Caucasian or black man of African origin that does ill in these countries. Anybody that does ill down south, Nigerians. Anybody that does ill down west. I mean, when I say west, 7 Nigerians, you never hear any other
Country.
Members of Africa. And that is a systemic problem because at the point in time, until this administration came in, we should give this administration some kudos. Just little leverage. It was so easy to get a Nigerian passport. In fact, somebody came from America and, a black American and, made fun of it. He just went, spoke the American day, just claimed to be from one place. Another one day, after some things greased this was like about 10 years ago, he got a Nigerian passport. An American that has no business being in Nigeria, just came on holidays, was able to get a Nigerian passport. But those things are changing. So all of this contributes, to where we are. But my advocacy is for us to shut down. Bring ourselves together as a team. When you watch the Super Eagles and the coach and the team are about to go for the second half, do you see the coach going to the crowd? Many of us are coaches. Many of us have certified coaching, certificates, but we're not FIFA licensed coaches. Do you see him going to the crowd to say, tell me what substitution I'll make, tell me what to do? No, they come together. We need that strategy. I don't know, what did you call it recently? About 5 minutes ago.
Strategy.
We need that. Let's come together as a nation. I'm not talking of any constitutional confab or conference. Come together. Let me give you a cue. Nigeria is looking for money. So we have been told. Money, I don't know how got missing. Because if I calculate how much we make from oil every day, it will amaze you. But I know that until the dollar crashed or until the naira crashed against the dollar to where it is today, I could with the fingertips of mine, actually count about 50 Nigerian billionaires. When I say billionaires, these are people that we know. Some we don't even know. Some you won't see on Forbes. Some you won't know. Very silent billionaires. And the government knows this people. What we should be doing is building a team and building a country where we can now trust one another. So much so that you call these billionaires who have different ethnic, tribal cleavages and origins and say, look, borrow your country money.
Yeah.
Give the 50 of you, give us $100 million each. We'll give you a promissory note with 20% or 30%. Consider this as national savings, because some of these billionaires don't even pay the tax. You know that they don't pay the tax they're supposed to pay. So give them the promissory note against the central bank, or against gold, or against oil or something, and let them, instead of give us, that means we can get and raise money from citizens in Nigeria.
We can.
That will be interest-free, that will be insult-free.
Even today.
And that will be free of all the terrific, diabolic conditions that we get from the IMF,
and world,
for us to move our economy forward. What am I saying? Let us look inwards. Let's be organic in our approach to rebuilding this country and restructuring the country economically.
I can't agree more. Our time is fast spent. But just before we go, now speaking possibilities, let's even say that we're already in Qatar. This is March 2nd, March 3rd, March 4th or 5th, and we're in Qatar already. How far do you think the Qataris are going to open their doors for Nigerian businesses to collaborate with them? And how far do you see? You were talking about China earlier. China's GNI coefficient is something else. But just look at it. Nigerians in Qatar, what do you think is going to come out of it? Is the last question.
Well, I am known to never want to deceive myself, and also to try as much as possible not to deceive others, because my worldview is eternal. So I have perspectives that allow me to live my life, in a particular way, irrespective of whose horse is God. Now, I honestly do not see any meaningful thing coming out of this visit. I could open the door to my house, to you and serve you a bottle of wine and give you some biscuits. But that doesn't mean that I may be intent on having anything serious, to do with you. Now, which individual or which country would want to invest a sovereign wealth fund in a country where you do not have a maximum guarantee that backs up your investments?
Exactly.
Which brings us back to what I have said. Let us build our home, build it back, build it better, and that way we would not need to go beg people to come invest in our country. We will have people begging to come invest in our country. When you take a look back at the history of Nigeria, the political and economic history of Nigeria, we had thousands and thousands of multinationals that were operating in Nigeria. Name them. Many of them have gone, many of them sold off the companies, many of them, again, out of the policy, the indigenization policy that came up under the Maurice regime in the 70s, lost their companies or gave up their companies because they had to make sure those companies were indigenized or nationalized, whatever the nomenclature. But when we have the right policy, when we have the right political architecture in place, when we have the right business environment in place that encourages people to come and stay, that gives the right incentives, that gives the right subventions, even to the local sectors to be able to compete, I still repeat, you wouldn't need too much shuttle democracy to get your country moving forward. Dubai did it. Abu Dhabi did it. The UAE, these are Emirates in the UAE. China has done it. We have pockets of countries that are doing it now. Ghana has done it, even though Ghana is struggling now. And many more countries, even around us here, have done it. And I'm certain that once we can paralyze this monster of politics, of tribe, of what is your name, of who is your father, where are you coming from, what location of Nigeria do you belong to, and so on and so forth. Once we can push those things behind us and build the team spirit, Team Nigeria, as a people, irrespective of party loyalty and party divides and cleavages, and just say to ourselves, this is what we want to achieve. I'm telling you, Cyril, most of the wicked problems, from banditry to kidnapping to youth restiveness to all the problems you can mention, I can assure you that they will be 80% eradicated from this country. And most importantly, we need a government that puts value on the life of citizens. Very, very importantly.
Well, who says this can't be done? There you have it, and that's how far we can go today on Homo Politicus. But that's not without first saying thank you, a big thank you to Kenneth Ikewa for making our time to come and so clearly and cerebrally, if I have to also add that, lay out the issues for us to make sense of this whole thorny question of Qatar reversing itself and agreeing that it will indeed rule by lateral talks with Nigeria during President Bola Tinubu's visit to Qatar this weekend. That's our offering to the Homo Politicus. Do well to subscribe to our page on YouTube. It's Enterprise TV7. The same handle goes for all our handles on social media. Until we come your way again, bye for now.
Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.